Hello, 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 you guys. Welcome to Life Discussions with Dr. Jefferson. I am your host, Dr. Jefferson, and man, it's been a super long day today. Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays are like slave days for me, like literally. But no, how are you guys doing today? Hello, Kay de jour. I know that you're at work. Hopefully, as you're listening, you'll be able to kind of answer some of the questions that we have posted. I want to start off by talking about American culture. If you guys checked out the description below the video, whether you're on Facebook or on YouTube, you guys will see that today we're going to talk about some of the general assumptions about what it means to be American, but also some of the things around accountability and the way that we sometimes are very fearful when it comes to us addressing and accepting some of these basic truths, especially when it's coming from other people. Specifically, I want to play a video from Lapeef Talk. Was Lapeef Let's Talk show? Um, and I kind of want to get you guys' insights on how you feel about the conversational exchange. Hey, Miss Sandy, how are you? Shout out to the chat because I know you guys are always lively around here. I know that you guys are always engaged, and I want to encourage you guys to be extremely engaging today and answer some of the questions that the show has today. We are trying out something a little bit new, and so we have posted kind of like a feature of what some of the questions are, kind of to give you guys a little bit of time before the show actually kind of kicks off or whatever, to be reflecting and thinking about your response to some of these answers. So as we move along the topics, I definitely want to hear from you guys. I will open up the show at a later point in time. So in about 45 minutes after we kind of get through some of this discussion, so that you guys can kind of join and express your opinions on the show. If you guys want to be on the show, you can do that live. But please, please, please remain as engaged as possible. Definitely render your comments forward because we want to hear from you. We want to know what you think about your experience, and the value you have for these different components. Hey, Joy, how are you? So, we're going to start with the American culture question. So, for those of you who feel like America is a country and there is no culture, essentially, like it's whatever, I want you to type a Y in the chat. For those of you who feel like America has a culture, I want you guys to tell me in detail what it is that American culture is kind of rooted in and what you feel like it's evolved to. And also, if you guys have a different subculture or a different culture altogether that contributes to your coming to America and your experience here, share with me the culture that your culture of origin, some of the things that are cultural components as opposed to just, these are people issues, people are in alignment this way. What are some of the cultural indicators from your culture of origin if you're not from America? So, those are my questions for you guys. I am going to open it up and talk about a little bit about what this video is going to display. So, I'm sure you guys have heard me kind of mention before that Lapeef Let's Talk. This is a show that I feel like he has some really interesting topics. I think I refer the official urban therapist over there, and probably a couple of you as well, so you could kind of check out some of the content, because I feel like they do have some very, very important conversations over there that we should all be probably engaging in. But also, and more importantly, and more to this conversation, they raise some conversations and questions around accountability. And I feel like these are sometimes topics that we have a tendency to avoid as Americans, women, men, and alike. We have a tendency to avoid those things. So I'm going to pull up this video.
In you guys' culture, do you feel like women are afraid of change? Start with you, Nina. Like, is that a big issue at all?
No, it's constantly happening. Change is happening every day, I would say.
Okay.
Add some more context, JR. What you mean by change?
Change meaning that toxic, toxic behavior, um, being loud and disrespectful towards men and to themselves, um, masculine energy. So those are just some of the things that I'm referring to when I say change. So here we have an issue where we feel like women have a problem holding themselves accountable or allowing other people to hold them accountable, not recognizing their mistakes. They're trying to go back and forth with you. They are who they are, and they're going to continue to be who they are, and they're not going to listen to anybody. So, do you guys experience that? Are women afraid of change?
We're gonna bring it back to you, Nina.
Okay,
The
Amira.
additional.
Go ahead.
Right. In my culture, the women want change, but change does not come easily, and the men prefer to keep it traditional. So it's more of a tug of war in my culture. Women want to have more freedom. They want to be able to speak up and speak out more. And I think the problem is the men, they see the Western women and they don't want to see the Eastern women turn into the Western women. No offense to Western women, but the liberation that the Western world has seen for females has brought a lot of issues that haven't been resolved yet. And they only seem to be getting worse in the West. And the East is trying to avoid having to go through what the West is through right now.
Can you kind of break down the East and West? Because I'm not familiar with that.
The Western world will be Britain, I guess you can say Europe, the North American region, South American region, and all of the Caribbean. That's still considered the Western world.
JR, think of it as places with heavy European influence, and things like that. Like,
I think JR. No, he's just
in the
he's
Eastern
just
world will be
defining it for the
considered
audience.
the Eastern world will be considered Asia, Middle East, India, and the Mediterranean.
There you go.
Come on, Matt.
Yeah. So
What do you think are those
so that's Eastern versus Western.
some of those unresolved issues that a lot of the Eastern men don't want to subject themselves to as far as the Western women that they see?
Women being unhappy. So it's a huge now I know maybe a lot of people will disagree with me when I say this, but Western women are very unhappy. No matter how they may act like they're happy, they're really not happy. And Eastern men see it. They can see Western women. They can see how unhappy they are with they got all their liberation and so on, but they're very unhappy. And if you look at Eastern women, no matter how oppressed you may think they are really happy with their families. They're happy in their homes, doing what we normally do. Yeah, there's always going to be problems. There are pros and cons of each lifestyle, but in general, Eastern women are happier. We have happier attitudes. We're happier at home. We tend to wear more flowy dresses and smile, and we tend to be, I don't know, just happier women. And I think Eastern men, they are afraid to see Eastern women turn into Western women, turning into this person who's like, I got to go to work in the morning. I'm tired. I don't want to come home and cook for you. I've been out working all day too. I don't want to deal with those kids. I don't know. Send them to daycare. They don't want to deal with having the woman turn into that. They want to have that woman happy to say, I don't want my kids to go to daycare. I want to keep them at home.
Do you know the average that in your country the men make?
I don't, but it depends on a lot of things. We tend to be rather well-to-do.
So, what do you guys think so far about the initiation of this conversation? And I really do hate to even say it, but how do you feel about the fact that before anybody else interrupted, there were the two black women on the panel interrupted this young lady in her dialogue? And how do you feel about what they had to say in interrupting them? So Amina is speaking to her experiences, um, primarily, and what I see, okay, just me, is that Courtney feels threatened by the dialogue, her perceptions, her narrative in this moment. And we kind of see that. Give me a sec so I can recalibrate my internet. Okay. We should be good now. Give me one sec, you guys, so I can make sure I'm on my direct connection versus the Wi Fi. Okay. Yeah. So now, can you guys hear me? So Miss Cindy says she's right. From what I hear, our women are the least desirable. In whose narrative? Are you speaking about Amira's narrative or Courtney? So do you hear her narrative saying that do you hear Amira saying that at least in her country of origin, because she's in America now, but are you saying that at least in Russia the women are married, or are you saying that in relation to American women? The Al show. What part of her narrative are you speaking to? Amira's narrative as well? Eastern women is vague. Okay, now you got there, because this is what I was asking. If you are including Asian nations like Japan, China, South Korea, Taiwan, and other countries in Asia, women in those countries get college educations, work, and have careers. Well, they do, but she is definitely referring to them as well. But I think what she's referring to, very much to my experience when I was in Japan as well, the vast majority of those women, regardless of how toxic Americans may consider their culture to be and patriarchal, those women are quite happy seated in their relationships, in their marriages, in their principles that guide and construct the way that they move. I mean, the very few of them who are not happy with it, typically they become exiled once they come to America and they start to do the things that American people do, like engaging in premarital sex and things like that. But some of their mothers have a really huge soft spot when it comes to their children. Hey, Stranger Talk Live, how are you? And so as a result, what we see is that there tend to be some level of incongruence, but the overall consistency of those women is that they're pretty happy. They're pretty content in their lives. So let me play a little more. But wait, before I hit the play button, right? I want you guys to understand this. Sometimes, in order for us to really understand what it is that someone else is saying, we have to be good receptors of information. Sometimes we're not good at receiving information simply because that information may feel like a slight to us, and we may become offended. And if we become offended, then we're on the defense. And if we're playing defense, we know we can't be on the same side of the field as the offense, right? So it prevents us from being able to really and truly sit with what the other person is saying. So Lapeef asked the question, why is it so difficult for women to accept change and, all of these things. However, he got from these women from different cultures that their women, very much like American women, would love to be liberated fully. They would love change. However, their husbands know their value, and their husbands know that they have a voice that's really important. And their husbands, the men of society, are kind of guiding where this stuff is taking their families. So these men who put their families first in their conversations with their women and their daughters, are conveying their concern. Okay, so let's hit play.
Is that how you say it? Well to do.
Right.
Tend to be
So
rather wealthy.
they make more money than men over here. So I think that's also important too, because wealth will determine a lot of things too. So women, a lot of us have to work because our
One other thing I forgot to mention, because Courtney is about to go into her excusing American behavior yet again. But so when you're comparing the amount of money that is made in other countries to American dollars made, it's really important that we are referencing the same careers, where oftentimes you're still compensated quite literally about the same for the occupations, regardless of where you are. There are different, means of, there are different monetary types there, but they equate to the same money, the value of the money here. So it doesn't matter if the number looks bigger, it's still the same amount of money. And inflation is a thing that has affected everywhere in the world. So not just one place. So if we were to look at the statistics at the of the medical field and things like that, looking at them, let's pull them up really quickly. Right now, engineers, medical professionals, and these are people who, are considered to be the leaders in society. Um, Data science, digital marketing. These are the people who are higher earners in average in India and in Russia. So science, digital marketing, medical professionals, machine learning experts. These are your engineers, blockchain developers, also engineers, software engineers, also engineers, chartered accountants, lawyers, right? Those are the same high paying jobs in America. The only thing that they typically don't add into there is YouTubers, because YouTubers are now, earning a lot of bank. And I think that they just haven't averaged what those numbers are, but that is from 2021. And if you guys want the source, it's policyadvice.net and cnbc.com, where they're referencing the stats from the CDC, as far as like what it is that the wage disparity is, and the average salary for different workers and the higher income salaries for different workers. And in both India and America, those people are making anywhere from $70,000 annual salary up to $250,000. So those are the stats, just so you guys have the numbers. So let me come back here. I missed some of those. I was in the stat screen. What is this? Okay. So what this lady seems to be referencing is Mid-Eastern region, which is, depending on the nation, has a little in the way of for education, jobs, and independent economic, and are rigidly dictated by men. But yeah, most cultures, I'm gonna be very honest, most culture outside of American culture, and Eastern Asia, are kind of dictated more so by men anyway, but that's not a big concern there, because even though these women are educated, many of these women have the choice as to whether or not they need to want to work, okay? So for the most part, vast majority of these men prioritize family, and as a result of that, the women don't have to work. So it's not compulsory. Versus in America, the mindset is, and I'll talk to that a little bit more as we move along these different topics or whatever that I have lined up for today. But your mindset has a lot to do with the way that you move, the way that you process, the way that you spend money, and all that good stuff. Okay. Miss Sandy, what is not true? It says most people who would marry in her country would not be well to do. These are poor countries in general. Well, just because they are a poorer country in general doesn't mean that they are not well to do families that she's around. So, Amira speaking from her perception, and she's Russian actually. Um, Yeah, I think, yeah, she's Russian. But so she's speaking from her perception only, and not necessarily speaking for the vast majority of people in her country, simply because she's only, the thing about over there is that there is limited access to people that are not the same social economic status as you, because there's limited interest basically. So let's hit play and allow Courtney to make excuses for Americans.
Our men are not making just enough money to take care of the entire family. So a lot of us are forced to work. So I think that needs to also kind of be said. Your men are able to have four wives because they financially can take care of all of them and they don't have to work, which in essence would make the women a lot happier because they don't have stress of having to work and take care of home and children as well.
Well, I wanted to bring up the point that in America, before women started working, men could take care of their family on one salary. Men were able to work as a mechanic or work in just, a 9-to-5 job, and was able to provide for his family, his wife, and 2 children.
Yeah.
Now, ever since women joined the workforce, things have been completely skewed. And now it's harder for just one person to bring home enough money. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's
But
like putting the chicken
well,
before the egg.
I'll respond to that because also economics and housing is also going completely up. So if you look at the average man that's making 40K, do you think he could take care of a wife and 3 kids on 40K?
Well, of course not.
Right.
So America,
It's an inflation over here, obviously. So they're not. So they could before when bread was a quarter. So I think that we need to talk about that too. Women are having to work and be in the workforce. Majority of us don't want to, but we have to.
I wanna bring up something. There is this push for women to say they want equal pay, equal, equal, equal. In fact, a lot of women want to earn more than the men. So I don't understand why this push for equal pay, and I want to make more and I want to make equal to a man, but you still want a man that's going to be able to take care of you and without you having to work.
Well, those are two
That's what
different.
I'm confused about, that push from the
Yeah.
women and the
Well,
West.
that's two different issues. So first, I wanted to make sure that we talk about what you were saying, that the women don't have to work because financially the men are well off. You guys make more money over there. So we don't here. So that's within itself. So let's not forget about that particular issue. So now that I think that we agree on that, and like you said, we can't raise a family off 40K. So if I'm making 40K, that's 80K. That's going to bring more to the family. So I think we can agree on that. So now let's move over to your next question.
Wait. So
okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
So, the thing about America is that in terms of like modern day America, it's not about keeping family values and keeping culture and tradition and doing all these things. It is about capitalism. It's about getting as many people to work for as low of wages as possible, getting as many people to buy as much stuff as they can. And with this and marketing and the way things are just pushed, it's the point. So like in your culture, the point is keeping that family structure solid, making sure, you know, that people, your person meets your dad and all this stuff to keep that integrity for in your culture up. But like in American culture, that's not the goal. Like, I don't even think in general, the government doesn't care about that at all. The whole thing is making sure people are working, making sure people are buying, and making sure people that are spending and making money. So like with that being the thing, how do you think that, like, do you still think, because I've heard you mention like with women joining the workforce, it kind of shifted. Do you think that America as a corporation, do you think that America has the best interests of people in mind, where they're thinking about family structure and community and culture, or do you think they're just trying to make money?
Well, that's not the government's job. And America as a corporation has nothing to do with family structures. Usually that, business and family structures is different. I wanted to bring up something though, just really quickly. You guys were saying, God, I almost missed my point. God, you guys made me forget it. Give me a second. All right. So my family came here with nothing, right? We came to this country. We worked, well, the men in my family rather, they worked these minimum wage jobs for years until they were able to save enough to start the business that we made. And now I'm not going to go into detail of my finances, but we're doing well. I see Americans that are born here, born with all this opportunity, not taking advantage, and rather not thinking outside of the box and thinking about all these businesses that can be opened, all these opportunities that this country has given you. But instead thinking, well, I have this minimum wage job that I'm making $40,000 a year. I can't afford a family. But it's like, you shouldn't have a family before you're able to get your finances in order. So I just wonder, why don't Americans take more advantage of this and think outside of that minimum wage job and that $40,000 and think more? Is the word entrepreneuristic? I don't know. You guys understand what I'm saying? Like entrepreneur style.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think, and it goes back to what we were kind of talking about with the first question, when you asked about like which one had more success in terms of like traditional ways of certain cultures, like getting married versus more American ways. That cultural foundation, because my dad is the same way. He's like, there is no excuse. He says, if you can't make it in America, you can't make it anywhere, basically. So I get that mindset completely. I just think that it's easy to say that when you don't understand the entire framework that has people in the position that they're in. So like, and it's not an excuse, it's just the reality. So because I'm trying to tell you, Amira, I get what you're saying, because absolutely, like my dad is the same. In fact, when you were talking, I was like, Daddy, like I literally Like I have heard,
Bertrand, what did I tell you? What did I tell you?
I've heard things before, but it's just that things are so much different, and I think that it's hard for people who grew up with that cultural background to even fathom anything outside of that. It's just not the same at all. It's totally different.
You talking about work ethic and saving?
Everything, the whole, like she mentioned, why would you even be trying to do this if you can't
Yeah, I
um
mean, why would you have it? Why would you try to start a family if you don't have money? I don't understand that either.
no, I mean, I don't personally understand it either, but
So
everyone's not
what's
the
your
same.
argument? I don't
My
understand.
argument is that clearly there are a ton of people who are in poverty that have families. And if there was, and I'm not saying that that's exclusive to America, I mean, there's a lot of people in poverty around the world that have families, but I just think that we have to be careful when we're thinking about applying one thing to everybody. Everybody just isn't the same.
You don't think that that's a part of the victim Olympics that we running the fastest?
No, it's not part of the victim Olympics. It's more so that the way that we can overcome these things, and I'm speaking specifically for Black people, the way that people in America that are Black can overcome these things is by recognizing them, first of all, and then working towards building a social.
You don't think that we know that we don't have? You don't think that we know that we don't have enough money to start a family and we do it anyway?
Yes, people do that, but I'm saying the mindset.
Okay, so you guys said a lot of things. You guys using a lot of words, as they say. Let me address some of these things. So let's go back to the Al Show's comment at 9:54 about most people who marry in her country would not be well to do. um so she's from Russia. And so if we talked about Russian current now, oh, let's see. Even though Americans tend to think that every country that the standard of living maintained in America is so much different and all that good stuff. Um I think for my property that is in Russia right now, if I were to sell it, the market value is over $8 million. And it's a standard house. Standard house, nice compound. It has a gate, of course. Most people have a gate, stone walls, and things like that, giving you boundaries so that other people can't infringe upon your property, especially if you're a person who visits and comes in and out of the country and you don't have somebody steadily maintaining residence there or whatever. Uh, last time I was there, 2019, beginning of 2019. So, groceries. Groceries are a bit expensive depending on what you're getting. But for the most part, I think that you can get like a liter of milk if you're just looking out for yourself. You can get a liter of milk for about $1. Eggs, about the same stuff that you buy here. Um, the price and the cost and inflation index is pretty much the same across the board right now. Let me see. Let me see if I can. Oh, I'm frozen. Can you guys hear me? I'm having like the worst connection today. So give me a sec, you guys. I'm going to pause and restart. I'll be right back. Okay, so I think my connection is reset so we can move forward. So as I was saying, and I'm kind of reading, I can see you guys' comments. Okay, and so I'll say this. So when I'm speaking about the dollars that it costs, I'm talking about in US dollars. I'm translating already for you. So I'm gonna look at the report for my house really quickly. And I will be right back. The one that I'm selling. Where is it? That means that actually the price went up. So it's actually 13,554,832 US dollars now. So, but it's what I would consider to be very standard, and it is what it is. It's not, to me, it's not like the greatest houses that I've bought in America cost significantly less and offer a lot more square footage on the inside. I mean, there are probably some upgrades and floorings and stuff like that, but that's pretty much it. So it just really depends on what a person's preference is, and of course, how they perceive their standard of living requirements. So if we looked at the reality, most of these women don't have to work because the standard of living requirement of these women may not be as high as some of the American women. American women typically do have the tendency to be a little extra. Um, I think if we're sitting with our truths, I think that we can admit that the way that we I agree. Okay, that's what I'm saying. But if we're sitting with our truths, I think that we can all agree that Americans have a tendency to, how they say, do the most. And the thing is, we're never satisfied with a little. We always need a tremendous amount, right? And so, what's his name? The one who just went through his divorce, Dr. Dre. So, let me talk to you guys a little bit about Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre and his wife started basically from nothing, and they built and built and built and built and built. Okay. And he has been ordered to pay spousal support in the amount of 300,000 a month. Just the spousal support. That's not including what he's paying for her car. It's not including what he's paying in child support for the youngest kid that's in college. So let's agree that people who come from nothing and continue to build, people like Tom Brady, who sold him the house, that his last house, right, that he and Giselle had. These people are people who do a lot. Okay, they do the most. So they don't look at, okay, what's the minimum needed? What do I need? They look at, what do I want? What can I afford? Americans' mindsets are based off of what I can afford. And I think I was featuring on Money Boy Trey's toxic masculinity on one of his shows, and we had a conversation. It was so interesting to me that there are so many misconceptualizations around what it means to live comfortably and what it means to apply your financial sense when it comes to buying houses and properties and investing and being financially wealthy versus financially rich, as they say. um and there are a lot of missteps, I think, in society. I had a conversation that led to the accountabilities conversation with what's his name, the official urban therapist, the other day, and I asked him again on this channel, what he felt his responsibility was to his community, right? On his show, there was a young man that was offended because at some point he was on my show, and I think when he started to be more in his trauma than realization on the topic, I muted him for a second and let another person talk, and he felt disrespected. That's life. So the thing is, when it comes to accountability, those conversations will be ruly on this channel. And when I invite people onto this panel, there is a method to the madness. Okay. So I think that you definitely have to be respectful to other people, but at the same time, nobody's going to be muted from their message unless their message is foolery and lies all the way. um I didn't say that Tom Brady built Giselle. My reference was to Dr. Dre, and I was talking about Tom Brady having sold him the house that he made the most amount of money off of, that they as a couple made the most amount of money of, expanded on, and things like that. hmm But so this is just this is me. I was making the reference to the house, not the marriages. The marriages I was speaking about Dr. Dre. Why? Because Dr. Dre is a black American who took an opportunity, expanded upon said opportunity. He used his music as a means to an end. He built on what he needed to build on, and then he built his empire, started investing, had the right type of woman with him. They both started with nothing, and they continue to build. But in their mindset was, let me live within my means until I'm able to do more. Versus young people, people in general now in America, feel like, let me live at this level of living because this is what I feel like I deserve or I am entitled to. Exactly. How much are you willing to give me? Right. So the Al show, what go back to it again. The reality of the US is that it is number one, all an all hands on deck economy that is predicated on individuals, both men and women, being able to take care of yourself. The cost of living is higher in the US. I don't agree that the cost of living is higher in the US because I literally lived and currently own property and live in other countries, and I pay the same. The only thing that's different is when I travel. So the cost to buy a ticket when I'm over there to get back here versus buying a ticket when I'm over here. I I've learned that I need to just buy a round trip ticket altogether. But so here's the thing. I think that the way that we misappropriate funds is something that we don't acknowledge. In America, we like to make excuses. We like to tell ourselves pretty little lies, um, as Courtney is doing right now. I think that Miss Sandy was spot on when she said that these two women were offended and they're speaking from a place of defensiveness because they don't it's not easy to sit with your truth. It isn't. It isn't. So when you live outside of your means, or even if you're within your means, let me share a truth with you guys. Even if you're living within your means and you're living excessively, I think that people have to learn that if we are people who really connect ourselves to community, to our culture, to our subculture, if we are really truly people that dedicate ourselves to our passions, and we say our passion is people, engagement, helping others, and things like that, then we have to ask ourselves, when we are misappropriating funds or spending money outside of what is really necessary, we have to ask ourselves, can we be doing something else with this money that would help another person who is in a different position, right? Um, you said it's hard to find a woman that is willing to sacrifice for the greater good of the family. So do you think that in her narrative, and I'll probably rewind a little bit so you can kind of hear what Amira's position is. Hey, Afros Fingalis. I'll go back and play a little bit of it and rewind a bit so you guys can see what her perception is, Mr. Brooks. Do you think that the woman's sacrifice is imminent? Do you think that that's the major thing? Like, and to what extent, if so? Because I feel like there are a lot of things that she's saying. She's using a lot of words, right? Like Kwame Brown say. But she's making a lot of sense, because the thing is, when we come from other countries to over here and you have business in different countries, you do start to recognize that there are some mindsets that are very, very different amongst people in Western culture versus people that are not. Okay, there are some things that are cultural norms in Western cultures that you better not bring that back home, period, point blank. And so I think it has a lot to do with what American culture is. Has anybody defined for me whether or not you guys feel like America has a culture? If we go back to this question, do you feel like American people have a culture? Do you feel like there is a particular set of rules that apply to American culture? Or like, do you even see anything in this rhetoric that Courtney is speaking? Even Amira, like, do you see anything in alignment with what they're saying that kind of gives you an idea of what American culture is universally to everybody else? No, you can't. So you don't think Americans have culture? Okay. So that's my producer. He's saying that he doesn't feel like Americans have a culture. Yeah, an overall. Okay. That's what culture is. Culture is rules. Yeah. Yeah. Boundaries, concepts, mindsets. Okay. So Mr. Brooks says that's why I believe black men need two expats earlier in life. Okay. Okay, Miss Sandy. I agree to that. What about the rest of you? Do you guys feel like America has a culture? Type of one in the chat if it's a yes, or two if it's a no. For those of you who feel like yes, America has a culture, tell me what you think are some of the overarching themes of American culture. Freedom to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Freedom of religious expression. So I think that a lot of people have lost that. The founding of and adopting of America in the colonies originally by the different Europeans who came here, colonizers, their idea was to move away from a system that was overarching, forcing Catholicism as their way and means to life. And they wanted to have some level of individuation. And so they came here for that. So that's what your country's framework is. So nobody can limit your intentions if you want to go out there and become an engineer. Nobody can limit your intentions if you want to go out there and become a stripper. Nobody can limit your intentions if you want to become, what's the other one though? The one that's so controversial. Stripper. Yes, the US does have culture. It's fend for yourself while other countries are much more citizens' needs focused. In Cuba, they're horrified that we don't have access to free healthcare. So, have you ever been to Cuba before? I know they're pretty restrictive in who they allow to come there because I had to go through the process myself before. Um, but I like to know other people who have visited and kind of what your observations were. When I was there, what I observed is that they are pretty well put together folks. They are the only country that I've tested as an epidemiologist that was disease free at the time. Meanwhile, America had a entire pandemic unveiling over here with HPV, um, and we were trying to figure out what we'd coin it. And there were several restrictions on who can come, who can do what, how you move. Very much similar to what Dubai is becoming. Hmm. So, do you recognize that every time that you were there, do you recognize that they operate very differently than Americans operate as far as like the freedoms, because there really are no freedoms per se. Cool, Spanish is my second language too. Finny is my Finny slash Portuguese is my first language, but American English is my third. American culture is consumerism first, debt first, satisfaction last, good life last. I love it. I love it. Okay, so I do agree that that's one of the innate truths of American culture. Let me click to my banners really quickly. Okay, that's one of the innate truths of American culture, Mr. Brooks. You hit it spot on. However, Americans' framework for culture initially were to go over, be independent of forced religion, and be free to expand and explore as they see fit, have as many kids as they want, do, build their economy, make themselves a viable independent country free of British rule. Okay. And so, bam, here we are. Um, and I think in creating that as the centralized focus of what they aimed to do when they did go over there, okay, here to America, they realized after buying into the slave trade that shit, there are people too. So we got to let them go and we got to free these people because we said that our foundation, our founding principles, right, was freedom and the innate pursuit to love, happiness, and all that good stuff, liberty, right? So, and those are the basic liberties. So, Cuba produces doctor and healthcare facilities. America produces guns, arms, and movies. In Cuba, they produce movies too. Okay, they have some very good people that are in the film industry, also in the tech industry. They got some great engineers over there as well. Hey, Candy Girl, how are you? But so we don't want to go ahead and say that they're absolutely terrible, but the mindset of the culture is necessity. So after the basic necessities are met for life and legacy, basic necessities are family, love, extending family. So marriage is a huge thing, right? Then you can kind of get into these other components. But you got to satisfy the basic constructs. In America, even though family used to be something that was extremely important for founding fathers or whatever. One second, guys. My iPhone was ringing. I put it on decline. But so even though this is, a point that definitely played a huge role in the kind of founding fathers ideals, family is not a point of contention for the vast majority of Black America. I won't say America as a whole, but I'll say Black America. And I'm curious as to why that is. In this video, what we've heard so far is we heard from people who said that there were financial stability meant your financial stabilities was a requirement to having a family, right? So if you look at the surface, what are some of your thoughts? What are some of the things that we value over having a family? Because if financial stability can look a lot of ways. Oh no, Cubans don't exercise with fear from the police, but they definitely exercise a huge fear when it comes to their government.
Yeah. Come, yeah.
So
What you call that?
yeah,
Capital punishment.
right.
For real. Like, no waiting. You got them all. They say so. Ain't no due process. Yeah, but
Exactly. I mean, and I've had a lot of people that I lost over there that I was really close to, but their government operates the way that it operates, and there is no
ain't no due process.
interfering from American, even American authorities that are over there for official government business. So, I mean, so we're not gonna make light of the fact that Cuba is a place where they make sure that they do what the government, overarching government, Fidel Castro is gonna do what he feels is what, right. It says I'm doing well after returning home from a vacation to Gatlinburg, Tennessee with a psychotic bipolar alcoholic family member. Good grief.
But a lot going on.
But it's a different existence because they are bound by different rules, different societals. They're not a free,
They got a need over
they're
there.
not a liberty type of country. They're a completely different animal in and of itself. I do agree. But
Yeah.
it's one that I feel like America was becoming that when Trump was in office. Says women practice hypergamy and society shames broke men, so it's money over everything. I agree. It is money over everything. I feel like some people in society definitely shame broke men, but what is a broke man to you? And what is a man's job? Like what does he owe? Oh God. I feel so sorry for you. That's difficult to hold space. It's difficult to hold space for people that are going through um bipolar episodes. Seriously, that is it's a lot. um it takes a lot out of you for sure. So let's talk about differentiation from culture and responsibility. So if we know that America's culture was basically shaped as the country that's supposed to allow people to pursue religious freedom, independence in the way that they think and move around religion and whatever, and now it's something totally different. It tells us that we've differentiated so much that we've gotten away from what those founding principles were, essentially, because other things have given us light, that we could be doing something else. Hold on. You are very welcome. I did say I would drop the link. So I'm gonna do just that really quickly. So the link will be in the description. Same rules apply. In order for you to share your insights, if you click the link, you will be backstage until I see that you cam up and verify that you are a real person and all that good stuff. I don't know if you guys can see it. Let me know if you guys are having a problem with seeing the the link. Can you guys see it in the description yet or no? So let's talk, Miss Sandy. Let's talk about that. So Google considers broke 12K and under. Others consider broke barely getting by. Is $12,000? You mean $12,000 a month, or you mean $12,000 annually? So that's my first question. Does anybody else agree with Miss Andy's idea? And if so, to what extent? Do you guys feel like, okay, so $12,000 a year? So tonight's topic is accountability for the nature of our productivity or lack of productivity in America, and redefining what culture means and why it is that we've gone so far left when it comes to us attaining a certain level of accountability and owning the standards, or how we've reshaped those, I guess, perceptions of what culture means, what culture is in America, and how we can be productive. So I have a couple of questions here. These are the questions that you guys are addressing today. Um, Around personal accountability standards in the Black community within America, and then of course abroad in America. And then, what do you owe your community slash subculture and culture? And what do you owe yourself? We're going to talk about trauma resolution and how that kind of ties into why we're so reactive, especially because this video that we're watching so far, we've seen Courtney and Kay be extremely emotionally reactive to another person's narrative and try to correct her narrative, even though she's sharing her individualistic experience. Definitely want to address this. Have women lost a sound sense of self in America as a result of feminism, as the various waves have evolved? And I want to talk about why some of the waves. Um, and the most important one, how like have men lost their voices slash the right to or responsibility to accountability. And this is the one that we're on right now, which is safe collaboration and consulting. So you guys want to invite people in, and this is one of the things that I talk about when it comes to the truths. Okay, you want to invite people from other cultures to share their perspectives of what they've observed about American culture versus their own culture. But the number one thing that we do is we seek to shame them for taking advantage of some of the things that prevent Americans from moving forward, because we have that entitlement mindset where we are staying in a place to where we want to continue to live this way for the rest of our lives versus being productive and moving forward and allowing the amount of assistance that our government provides to us to give us some, a head start on getting ourselves established. um but yeah, so that's what we're talking about. And the video that we've listened to and we've kind of watched is from Lapeef Let's Talk. So I'm gonna play a little bit of it while you guys kind of let that marinate.
I don't think it's not that I get it. The reality is people don't want to be broke, whatever. But I'm saying there is a different mindset. Like for me personally, there is no getting pregnant before you're married. There is none. Like I have held on to that piece of my dad's side of the family. I can't get pregnant before I'm married. That is me though. Everybody is not exactly the same.
You
And
don't think everybody got a brain and they understand that if they don't have money, they won't be able to take care of their families? I
Antoine, can
don't
I
really
say
understand.
something?
This is like,
Can I say something in
hey,
his
have
defense?
at it.
Um,
I moved my mic out of the
hold on,
way.
we're
I
gonna
want
go
to
to
let y'all
Courtney.
rock.
Hold on, we're gonna go to
well, I
Courtney
have a
first,
question
and
for
then we'll go to
Amira.
Amira.
Why did your family come here?
My family came here because in Russia there was a lot of things going on, a lot of fighting.
So America is safe to you.
Right.
Okay. And you guys had no other family here that built up while you guys are waiting. Y'all just came. I do
Just
hear a lot of
came.
immigrants that come here. Um, the pick myself up from the bootstrap mentality. So, I mean, I do believe a lot of Americans tend to be lazy because we live in abundance.
Thank
Everybody wants to
you.
be here.
Thank you.
Everybody around the world wants to be in America. I mean, it's the best country ever. I definitely agree with that. But our mentalities are different. You come from Russia, which, like I said, you're fighting. So this was peace. We don't have those issues, so we can relax.
so the
We can.
mindset is
Our
different.
mindset is different. We can chill.
Well, I
I
wanted
felt
to
like I
come
was fighting
in
in my
defense of.
neighborhood. I was in
Anton,
grind mode. I don't know where y'all
Well,
was
I
going
don't.
at. I was going
You
in the
comparing
hood, and I
Detroit to
came through.
Russia?
right, exactly.
Yeah, I
Anton, you're
am.
literally proving the point.
If you've
Anton,
ever been a little kid raised across from the crack house and seen the Ray Vans pulling up and seen
Anton,
dudes, seen a random bullet, and then you came home in the middle of after a party and you seen a crackhead coming out your window. Yeah, I'm gonna
Anton,
compare
you're
a
probably
person.
assuming it's probably
I'm gonna compare the red zone to
Anton, you're
Russia.
I'm gonna have
I
to say
proving
really
the
am.
point. You are right now proving the point of American just what's the word I'm looking for? You're proving the point because you're comparing your life in Detroit to certain other countries where you it's just not the same. Because poor
But you're
or
missing her point. Her point was is that people come from very difficult situations and backgrounds, and then some of us make excuses as to why we can't make a difference, and then others of us actually capitalize on the opportunity that's in front of us instead of blaming everybody else as to why they can't get ahead. And
So how do you guys feel about Anton? And I'm gonna be honest, you know what I mean? I kind of watch Lapeef Let's Talk sometimes, and I feel like the most pragmatic of many of them is Anton. And I don't feel like a lot of people really talk about or recognize the impact of trauma, and you got because you haven't had that same experience, right? It's easy for us as people to move in a place to where we're discrediting other people's trauma. You think that Russia is far more oppressive? How so? I own property in Moscow too as well. So well they went they didn't actually. They didn't. Actually the two are very interrelational. Who understands that there is a intersecting reality with the health of relationships, especially in Black America, and the economy and stability and viability of the Black man feeling like he's the glue in providing for the family. Anton is a man who, for the very first time that I've seen from Black men, has made it very clear that he will not lose his voice. He's made it very clear that he's willing to allow some level of comparison to give a more comprehensive look at what actually is going on in America as compared to other traumas that are relayed from other people based on the way that he's receiving and identifies with said trauma. So, what I want to say is this, right? If you're going to be a person who wants to make excuses, the reality is you're not going to go anywhere. You will be the person who is creating the chaos for you. You will be the person who is silencing your voice. You will be the person to prevent you from stepping out and becoming great and overcoming your obstacles. You will always be looking to make more money because you equate life success with making a particular amount of money versus a legacy, right? And we have sometimes some very unrealistic expectations in life in general as American people, especially Black American people. And so, what's important is that we point out the fact that there is a huge incongruence when it comes to the way we conceptualize what it is to be successful in families, to tether yourself to families, to really value your family, to provide for your family, to have the idea or the mindset that, as a man, it's my innate responsibility to make sure that my family is provided for. Okay. Um, and what that looks like for so many people in America, we are so synthetic. We are so superficial. We are so surface, and that's it. We don't delve into the nooks and crannies at all. It's like these women out here, and I know I'm about to piss somebody off, but it is what it is. It's like these women out here that are wearing wigs, but they don't take care of their natural hair. To me, it's the exact same. It's symmetrical. That's what being American really is. That's what it really is. I mean, I fluctuate, but I feel like it's necessary for me to, you know, care for all of me. So I care for my wigs, and to be honest, I think that I'm gonna be more abusive to my wigs than I am my natural hair. I'm just gonna be honest, throw that out there. Not putting no, harsh styles and harsh products in my natural hair. We're just not doing that. Just not doing that. I'll put whatever in a wig. Be like, well, if it washes out, oh well. If it don't, oh well. Says, what do you think values marriage? Who do you think values marriage more, men or women? It's really not about the value system. And on this channel, what accountability is about is definitely not being a comparative person when it comes to men and women. So if you continue to compare men to women, you will continue to fail in life in general because men and women are not comparative, they're complementary. So you have matter and you have glue. Okay. So if you have a lot of matter, then you've got to have something to bring it all together, something to keep it all together. And so if we're thinking about it in ways, you have the man who provides stability for the family system or keeps it together by way of providing for and protecting it, right? So that's the reason that he is the glue. Even though we refer to so many women as the glue to keep the system together, the man is the glue for the system in and of itself because he's the protector for the system in and of itself. He's the provider for the system in and of itself. So when something comes up against said system and hits it really hard, and that system can kind of come apart a bit, disconnect a bit, that man's protection is guiding and leading and constructing safe spaces for that said system to stay together. So I hope I'm really reeling that in for you guys and making that very clear. So while the woman is advising and making sure that she's multiplying what it is that he's providing and giving that back out, that's going to increase the amount of stability, the amount of protection for said system. So if you understand the way that that works, if you understand the parts that are important to keep systems in alignment and working, then you will understand that the sun and the moon and the earth have dependency on one another, lean and depend on one another. We talk about manifestation. The moon and the sun is always out at the same time, but the moon, sun, stars, and the earth are not all in alignment at the same time, but one time every 20 or so days to 30 days, depending on, when it is, what time of the year it is. So that's why we only experience typically one new moon every month, but there are 13 new moons in a full calendar year. So I think that you have to understand the importance of how everything else comes into alignment if we allow ourselves to also be identified as a system and bring ourselves into alignment and stop doing comparative analyses, because we don't do that. We don't say, okay, well, sun and the moon need to be compared to one another, the earth and the moon need to be compared to one another. We don't do that. So why do we do that when we're trying to talk about the same thing about systems and families? Who has taught you that that was what works? Just curious. Machine parts are systems. Nobody does a comparison. The screw and the nut and the bolt, like, you know what I mean? I don't understand that. Do you? But people, we can't see families. We can't see congruence. We can't see society as collective parts that are interdependent on one another. And the systems, in order to maintain functionality, we have to recognize the importance equally of every element. No matter how minute it may seem to one person, one element, one outsider, onlooker, everything is of equal importance. So there are no comparisons. The detriment of the Black family and culture in America has a lot to do with social comparison theory. And when we break that down to people, I don't think it resonates with most people on a cognitive level. I think that so many people have been brainwashed and deconstructed to be the detriment to one another, that they can't find any level of congruence. They can't find anything that aligns in the same way. So let's pull up Miss Sandy's comment so we can dissect the idea. This last one that you just put up there, I didn't see it. So apples and oranges, the machine bolt does not file for divorce because the nut is rusted. On the contrary, I guess we could look at it like that. So let's look at that. So the nut is this little thing that moves around, and it's eventually going to continue to twist and twist and twist as the machine is operating. Okay, the machine is the overarching system. Let's say call the machine the marriage. Let's say the nut, okay, is the wife. All right, the bolt is the husband. So as long as the nut and the bolt continue to tighten towards one another, nobody will file for divorce. Therefore, the marriage will continue to operate in full capacity. So, however, if the machine continued to move and move and move and move and sway and move as it's operating because another component in the machine is dysfunctional and it needs attention, and nobody on the outside, the engineers that are responsible for the maintenance of that machine, nobody else maintains that system, guess what? The nut divorces the bolt because eventually it twists all the way off. Eventually the machine falls apart and it's no longer working. So now do you see apples and apples? See, I'm really good at this because this is what I do for a living. So I can draw congruence from any system. So you said the reality, however, is that dependence isn't feasible nor predicated in this economic system. It's based on interdependence and autonomy. I mean, independence and autonomy. The more dependent you are, the more problems you will have. I agree, but I didn't say dependent, did I? The word I used was interdependent. So people still have to remain separate entities. If we were to go back to Miss Sandy's um, point of contention, right? And that's fine because most machines that come apart are coming apart because there are more nuts screwing themselves away from the bolts. And I guess they're the ones that's breaking down the machine. So that's neither here nor there. So what happens? So the solution, though, we've identified the problem, right? So I don't think we need to restate the problem over and over again. The solution is for us to investigate the deeper issue in the system, which is two people who are pulling away from the system, just like this nuts and bolts, okay? Pulling away from the system because they're not identifying proper communication strategies, proper expectations that are realistic for their system surviving. They're not looking far enough ahead as to what it is that they need in order for them to remain congruent in their personality development as they move on through life. They are very inflexible on things that they should be flexible on at the very beginning of the relationship because they are very surface level, okay, congruent, but they're not deeper. We have to get deeper in our understanding of what it takes to have relationships survive and thrive. We have to get deeper in understanding what it takes for us to continue to move forward as a community. And we have to get more deep in our understanding of what it is that we owe our community. Therefore, do things that align with the fact that we understand there is something that we do owe our community. Okay, if we identify that there is a particular thing that we owe our community, we have something that let me go to it. What do you owe your community? What do you owe your subculture? What do you owe your culture? Right? If we defined these elements, if we just define these elements, we would be on our way to finding solutions that are viable to sustain marriages, to sustain healthy relationships, to be better at regulating ourselves, to be better at regulating our emotions, to be better at acknowledging that a thing is a thing, period. So we do have to kind of get to resolving the trauma. And we do also have to understand that before we can define what we owe our community and our culture and our subculture, we have to first understand what it is we owe ourselves. And that's permission, permission to be authentically. So, individual autonomy is not something that blocks out interdependence, but it's definitely something that will block out dependence because it's necessary for us to understand who we are before we can effectively contribute to something else. We kind of have to focus on self first. The introspective work does have to be done first. But I think that the larger issue here is the fact that there is so much value around finances that the vast majority of people, if we continue on the course that we're on, the vast majority of people won't have a true legacy to leave behind. Vast majority of wealthy families will only end up adopting because their biological clock has timed out, and the only thing they have left is to adopt. And that's not to say that adoption is a bad thing because there are several kids out here with parents who are dying during childbirth and then the other parent is not there or available. And you have some people who have parents who are having kids, but they're not ready to be parents and do the job that it takes to be an effective parent. You have so many people out here who are having kids and they can't provide for those kids. So those kids do need parents. But if we are people who believe in continuation of legacy, continuation of culture, we have to also be people that invest in ourselves and invest in our culture by way of handing down customs and traditions that have been long fought, long taught, and have been long held as important for those people that came before us. Otherwise, we lose sight of it and we become the society that we see today. So I think that people have to make a choice. Very much like Anton said, he came up in a very war torn, war stricken area. And Courtney and Kay immediately devalued his experience, devalued his trauma. You can't discredit someone else's experience and their trauma because you can't be inside of their experiences. You can't be inside of their amygdala. So you cannot help shape any responses whatsoever as it as it relates to their trauma. Well, the thing is, the majority of people are not creating kids. It's a minority of people creating kids that they cannot take care of. The vast majority of American culture is electing to not procreate because they are not married, they have no intentions of being married, and they have moved from, divested from marriage in the Black community. So, what do you feel you owe yourself? What do you feel you owe yourself at this level of life where you've already differentiated yourself from the vast majority of culture? You recognize some of these innate truths that say that the likelihood for marriage is low because women are divorcing men and men don't value marriage and all of these things that people say. So if these are things that you truly believe in, right? If these are your belief systems, what do you owe yourself at this point? How do you resolve the trauma associated with those particular beliefs? If you are people who believe differently than that, what are your basic truths that guide and shape your understanding of what your subculture is? And what do you owe your culture or subculture, right? As a result of what you owe your culture or your subculture, what have you defined that you owe yourself? What traumas are involved in your process? Have you already kind of gotten to the point where you're going to resolve some of those traumas? Are you a person that is still kind of just waiting for it to resonate? Okay, so you say it's not worth it for a man to get married. You owe yourself happiness and that's it. So what does that happiness look like? If it doesn't look like marriage, what does it look like for you? And of course, the larger question here is, what prevents us as Black and brown melanated people from being able to safely collaborate and consult with other people and hear their truth as what their truth is instead of us making up what their truths are and denying them their truths? So you said marriage is by definition an economic and financial institution and a legal status. Thus, money and resources are the dominant forces within. It's not predicated on relationships. Um, I have quite a few cultures that would, disagree. So it's not a legal status in some countries because some countries don't have an organized government for it to be a legal entity. But marriage is still something that is very much prevalent and it's more of a spiritual entity. And their cultures are based off of spiritualism and religion. So not necessarily government overrule. So um do you think so? But here's the thing. This in this particular segment, even if Miss Sandy is a man or a woman, it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, this is about personal accountability more so than a collective collaboration of blame because we're not going to blame. Blame is no longer a part of the conversation. Accountability doesn't include blame, shame, or any of that. So we can't be moved by people in their perceptions and their experiences. So if they believe, if your innate belief system is that marriage is doomed, I welcome that perception today because I want to know as a result of that, What are you going to do? What are you going to do? So, regardless of what society is going to do, what are you going to do individually? Because I think that Anton makes a great point on this video when he says that there are people who are in the hood that stay in the hood and they don't become anything. They don't do anything with themselves. They use the fact that they came from the hood as an excuse. You got people out here using the fact that they came from a one parent home as an excuse. You got people using every excuse that you can think of in the Black community because that's what we have been literally deduced to. And that's a sad truth, but it's a truth anyway. However, there are several very successful Black people that came from a single parent home. Several successful Black people that were raised in single parent mother led homes. So it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, happiness is being a single male, free from toxic relationships, families you don't want, and financial issues you don't have to deal with. At least that's how it has been in my life. Marriage, no. Okay. So I guess it really doesn't matter if you divest from your family system, essentially, because if you're never going to get married, that means you're never going to have kids or a legacy. So it's pretty irrelevant. Right, Candy Euro? What one? I read that one already. Oh. Identify as an alien. Interesting. Interesting. But yeah, so let me hit this play button again so you guys can see how this conversation unveils. And I want you guys to specifically watch for oh no, you're fine. I want you guys to specifically watch for the the suppressive techniques that are used.
So that's the whole point of the conversation, not trying to compare backgrounds. And I identify with that because I was in a space where my father said, hey, we not going to be like this forever. And I'm going to make the sacrifice in order to ensure that my family long term can be successful. And as a result, me and my brothers are the beneficiaries of it. And
But
we
you're still
also
speaking from
we
a place
also
of privilege.
we also hold on to that work ethic as a result of our mindset, and that we don't believe in making excuses. We only believe in results. And so we don't run the victim Olympics. We take responsibility and ownership of whatever the situation is, and we make the best of it.
You're speaking from a place of privilege. Everybody doesn't even have a father. Like, you don't understand your level of privilege, Anton. You seem to be overlooking that. That's the part that I think is problematic. Because
you do have a father, and you still make excuses as to why
I don't make
people can't do
excuses
what they're
for
supposed to
myself.
do.
I'm not making an excuse for me. I'm successful.
So are you making excuses for everybody else?
No, I'm not making excuses for everybody else. I'm extending some form of understanding that everybody, and I'm not saying I grew up in the most, privileged whatever, but I'm making the what I'm saying is that everyone does not grow up the same. So I'm not going to sit up and say, just because I did it, you can't. Like, it's just insensitive to me, considering the fact that different people go through different things.
No, your mentality is the reason. Your mentality is the reason that the Black community is in the space that it's in. They continue to they continue to lean on the mentality that you have, and that there's always a reason and excuse as to why people can't do what they do. And as a result, we always gonna be running in last place because the majority of the people echo what you think instead of taking advantage of the mindset that other people that we see. We got all of this technology. We can communicate with other people. We got a mirror on the panel right now telling her story. We got a mirror on the panel telling her story right now of what success looks like, and taking responsibility, owning it, Even if you have to work a minimum wage job, you do it until you can do something better. But ultimately, don't make excuses. Take ownership of your situation, make the best of it, and stop blaming other people for your problems. It's that simple. But then when we have other people that make excuses for people, it's easy for the weak ones to ultimately lean on that in order to justify their behavior. But we saying there ain't no more excuses. Destroy, rebuild, that's dead. We not letting people get away with that junk no more. And I appreciate people like Amira coming on a platform with a different perspective that comes from a different culture that ultimately echo the same mentality that I have, and that there is no such thing as an excuse. If you want to have kids, if you want to have a family, if you got a dick, then take the responsibility of the carnage that you leave as a result of it, or own the success that comes with being responsible for how you impact other people. And your words, in my opinion, impact people in a negative way because it gives them more excuses as to why they can do what they want to do without any accountability and only compassion that comes along with it. It's silly.
No. So the fact that I recognize that everyone's not the same is me
And then I'm coming
providing a crutch. Like, I don't see how that's the same thing. Just because I know that even statistically, if you're raised in a 2-parent household, it's different than a 1-parent household. If you're raised in a certain socioeconomic status, it's different than another one. Just because I know these facts, that means that I'm providing some kind of excuse. That, I mean, you're trying to turn a blind eye to the real world in the country that we live in. You literally just try to compare Detroit to a war-torn Russia. That people,
if war-torn Russia is worse and they came over and made a better situation as a result of it, that's even more speaking to my point as to why you shouldn't have an excuse if you was born in this country.
That's what.
Well, and I know Nina needs to speak, but let me just say this: it's different cultures around the entire world. But to say Russia, just because she came from Russia, and that doesn't mean her whole culture in Russia is like that. There's trash people over there. There's baby mamas over there. There's crackheads over there. There's crackheads every single way around the world.
It's racism. It's mostly racism.
Right. There you go. So we all have these core issues every single where. We all have people that are able to pull up their boots from the bootstrap or whatever and make it. That's everywhere. A lot of people are going to get lost. That's everywhere. I just don't want this to be a conversation where we talk about a particular culture and they're getting it all right and we're all wrong. Because even if they believe in something, if you go over there, everybody's not living that way.
Yeah,
like
but
we
the
can't be
mindset of people that are
blind to
successful,
say we can't
the mindset of people that are successful, the point that I'm making
it's
is
a
that
mind frame, it's a
Exactly.
state
It's a mind-
everybody. If you're going to be successful, you have to have these particular characteristics.
Yep.
It's not necessarily culture based. It's a
Right,
mind
but
frame.
I agree with you, Courtney, but this is my point, is that the mindset behind how people become successful extends beyond culture. It extends across cultures. But for
Right.
some reason, I find it often in people that have the mentality that Kay has, they refuse to step outside of their own way in order to adopt the same philosophies and principles that does extend across cultures. And they lean on this whole thing of black, or this, or America, and comparing things instead of looking for where the benefit is, learning from where people have done it successful, and then implementing that instead of trying to lean on this crutch and enabling people to continue to be worse off than they are. And this is what you see. It's cyclical. It's going to continue to repeat itself because we don't live 1,000 years. We don't learn from our mistakes. And by the time we figure it out, it's too late because the next generation is saying, I'm not rocking with that. You lived your life. I'm living my life. And it's important for us to step outside of what we've normalized and realize that there is a different way, and it does not come as a result of leaning on a crutch and using other people as an example as to why we can't become what we need to become.
It's
as
not
simple as
me
that for me.
creating a crutch. It's not me doing that. I am not saying like everybody just do whatever you want. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that reality is reality. And in order for us to, like I said earlier, build the social infrastructure, to do the things that need to be done to create a better world for us in the next generation and the next generation, we have to recognize the situation that we're in. You can live in La La Land, Anton, and think that every single person grew up with these two parents that were telling them the game and doing all these.
You do realize
Okay,
that
okay, but
hold on,
It's
Jr. You
just
do
not the
I'm just
case.
trying to figure out how's that helping
Everybody.
us, Kay?
hold on, Jr. Hold on, Jr.
You know, how's that helping us by saying
You
that?
do realize that I've spent over $1 million documented in communities helping other people, that I volunteer regularly, that I'm active, that I'm coaching people, that I'm having
Good.
conversations. Hold on, that I'm having conversations every single day to help improve and play a role in the success of other people. So how
Good.
can you say in any way, shape, or form, knowing what you know about me, because you know me in real life, how can you say in any way, shape, or form that I'm living in la la land when I'm one of the very ones that's doing the work on the ground and socially? How can you even say that out of your mouth?
Because you also know me in real life, and the fact that you're trying to say that I'm propagating something that's the detriment to the Black community, like, what are we doing here? You know that that's not true.
I'm not even gonna do this. Go ahead, JR.
Don't do
All
it.
right, Nina. No, it's a lot of conversations going on right now, a lot of responses. We'd like to hear your thoughts about what's going on, what's being said, and even if you want to add something new to the conversation.
Well, a lot has been said.
Gosh.
Just pick one thing, but kind of going back to what Amira said about, starting a family once you're in the right financial position. I mean, I think that we can all agree with that. I know some people definitely have get pregnant unintentionally, and it happens. As far as us and asking for my opinion, and I think that all of us would love to have babies when we're in a great financial state, but a lot of times it doesn't happen. As far as me and my husband, we don't have kids right now because we are waiting to be in the right financial position for it, and we are in the financial position to have kids. However, I chose we chose together, mainly my decision, and he supported it. I wanted to go back to school, finish school, start my career, pursue that career, and then start a family. We are in a great position to have kids right now. However, I just wanted to push, at least on my end, for more. And I wanted to be able to know that I was also providing for our family just as much as the father was, and that's just how we want to raise our kids. Um, but yeah, I do agree. I mean, I think anybody can testify to the fact that they would love to have babies under the situation where they have the money for it. A lot of times, it does not happen. At least for us, we're working on that, and trying to pursue that kind of thought process as well.
Okay. Hey, Courtney, go ahead and take us home with this one. Final thoughts.
Oh, okay. Well, I definitely believe that there's a core thing that we all should predominantly follow, which is, waiting before you have sex till marriage and having kids within that marriage. Um, Shit happens. So now that it's happened, now what? How are we going to fix it? And we don't fix it by trying to look at other cultures. Well, they're being better than us. Well, truth be told, they're having the same exact problems as well. People are people, whether I'm here in Bermuda, wherever, people are people. So I think we just need to bring the focus. Okay, so now, how do we get a culture back here in America? How do we set traditional ways? Because as of right now, there's no tradition here. We just do anything that we want. So we don't have tradition here. So it's hard to speak about other countries and their tradition where we're just all over the place. So let's talk about that. We were biblically based. Now everyone is every single religion. People are atheists and don't believe in it. So how can you tell them to be biblically based and they don't even believe in God? So we don't have a tradition here. And then when people come over here, they wow out and want to be like American girls because they think it's so much fun. So I don't even know if we really talked about the topic.
It's okay. That's how like
Like,
yeah.
we
I
didn't
mean,
talk
that's how a
about
lot of people let's talk is. I mean, we start on the topic, we get off a little bit, and then we bring it.
What do you guys feel about? I'm sorry, you guys, I forgot I was muted. But what do you guys feel about what you were hearing from this conversation? Okay, let's pull up comments. Sorry, y'all. I was turning my light off because that thing be like burning. Okay. With very serious health issues, lupus, fibromyalgia, etc., and stress causes severe pain in my body. Nope, can't do it. Candy girl, you know what? You'd be shocked to know how much stress, how much the role of stress in your brain plays into the manifestation of these particular health issues. Stress has been known for ages to be a part of the pathology when it comes to inflammation and inflammatory diseases like lupus. But so, oh yeah, I know. I unmuted myself. Sorry. Sorry about that. So let me look at some of your comments. The way my life is set up, I have zero tolerance policy for toxicity. No matter the source, I will cut anyone off who brings negativity and drama to my life. The reason being is that I have that idea. Okay, you're talking about you deal with those particular issues. Uh, I can't. What was her name? That girl. I can't remember her name. The one that was down and over to the side. I know the other one was Amina, but the other girl, the one that was talking about she and her husband had elected not to have babies right now. Yeah, she didn't say a whole lot because she was shut down immediately by Courtney. How did you guys feel about Courtney and her emotional reactivity in this video? Y'all gotta excuse it being so dark, but after a long day, I can't take the light. So says I know I was poisoned by mold and lived in a sick building. Good grief. You guys have definitely been through it. Maybe we'll do a therapeutic space holding exercise one of these days. Manifestation show or something. Get some spiritual wellness in here. I'm gonna look at some of you guys' comments because, like, I wasn't privy to see them because, like, sometimes my producer puts the comments up and I'm talking, so I can't see the comments because I'm looking at the camera in and of itself, and I can't necessarily see me either. Hmm. Have you talked to anyone in the hood? A lot of them are much happier than upper class married folks. That's what I mean by just make yourself happy. Okay. Ideally, more money, more problems. That can be a truth. Um, some people, uh, some people find a way to be unhappy regardless of where they are and what they have going on in life, and they literally have to be stripped of everything in order to bring them back down to level and sit with the reality that life is literally what you make it, and you've got to actually put forth some level of work. And that's a sad truth, but it's a truth nonetheless. Progeny aren't a legacy. Your accomplishments and career are. Okay, I mean, one could say that, but literally a legacy is what you leave behind that is of you, that can continue to allow your memory to continue to live on, as manifested by their actions directly. One could easily say the works that you contribute to in this lifespan will eventually one day die. With the death of the internet, with the death of technology, with the death of all things, because people in general we overuse everything. There is nothing that we use in moderation. Everything we use in an abundance. We overstep. That's our thing. So, um, yeah, Reiki can be extremely helpful, but also Tantra and Reiki mixed together. And I think mindfulness, meditative practices can definitely be a part of each. I survived cancer myself with herbs and mindfulness based practices. So I can definitely speak to the fact that, yeah. And I had stage 4 cancer. So I'm a Reiki 2 practitioner and also a spiritual practitioner. I would love for you to have a spiritual talk therapy night for us. Definitely. Definitely. I think that that is something that is much needed. Because a lot of people are in a lot of dark places, and sometimes when we find ourselves in these spaces, we can't be as motivated as we need to be, which speaks to what I was talking about as far as like trauma resolution. So if we don't resolve the trauma, there is no way that we can get back to being our best version of ourselves or putting forth a seated foot in society that allows us to progress in life. I think that oftentimes there are too many advisements that are taken from people outside of the community in America, and they're mistaken by Black Americans. And as a result, we remain unproductive because these people would love to see everything out of reach for us, but we do determine our outcomes. I think that what Anton said tonight was it was amazing. It was amazing to see a Black man stand up and say, Americans have got to get off their asses, stop being lazy, stop making excuses, and be the change that they would like to see by way of doing something. I think that Kay has bought on and ascribed to this very popular notion of Kevin Samuels because he does appear on their show quite frequently. But as you can see, the impact of Kevin Samuels on a man with his own independent algorithms and his thought versus the impact of Kevin Samuels on a woman who is lost, conflicted, and trying to figure out how she can position herself in a society where she is less than desired per the person who's giving her the advice. You now can see how one could be impacted. And it's interesting to me when I was listening, to the validity of the different arguments. I think Courtney and Kay were so involved with trying to discredit, devalue this man's experiences with his trauma that they miss his point altogether. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's sad. That's sad. So you can't just dismiss somebody else's trauma just because it doesn't align with what you would like to say as is the reason that Black people are behind. At some point, I'm curious to know, when is it that we get tired of the rhetoric that white people had a head start on us? You would have thought that people saw that, okay, the unveiling of the tragedies in Tulsa would have been something that gave the Black community a little bit more fuel underneath their feet as they moved forward to progressing into better spaces. But it only gave a crutch, another crutch. You got people like Puff Daddy trying to incite violence and riots and all that stuff. Hey, Mr. Brooks, welcome back. And instead of encouraging people to mourn for these people who have been unveiled and given a proper burial at this point, let's celebrate these people and what they lost as we move ourselves, position ourselves in places where we can be more creative and moving forward and rebuilding, right? Rebuilding structure, rebuilding value systems, rebuilding subculture in Black America. No, of course not. I'm expecting too much, right? So I think Anton was right. I think he was right. And to see a Black woman further going down the tunnel of excuses and further going down the tunnel of these people come from single Black led female family systems, so therefore they're not productive or they're not successful. That says so many things about the way that you see the women in the family and don't understand the contribution that women have made to the stability of systems and their responsibility this entire time when it came to their children, and these ages and ages and generations of families where the women were responsible for raising the kids in general. So I think that we got to get out of our way, and we've got to adopt accountability principles and accountability standards across the board that say, okay, I'm willing to be accountable. And it says you should never discount the experience of other. I think a lot of Black people have been indoctrinated by their elders about the past and have internalized it. I totally agree about the vicarious trauma. That's what that is. Like I feel like, and here's the thing. I think that we have to learn to hold spaces. That's what it's about. Says our biggest argument with Black America right now is people don't realize that someone's going to drive some Hondas and um living some $200,000 homes, not $400,000 homes. So what do you mean? I have a lot of trauma that I'm working on. That's why I love your show so much. Do you take United Healthcare and do teletherapy? Yes, to both. I do have a contract with them, but it depends on which plan. Since I'm living in Florida, I noticed that foreign women are more willing to get on board with a Black man trying to make it and build a business and community. Okay. Is that the dynamic in Florida kind of in general? Anybody else from Florida? And I think that it just depends. So, what I will say is this: I did an accountability episode about the way that Black Americans don't realize their level of privilege because it's so easy for us to kind of blame the privilege component on white people, white America, crutches. We love crutches, you know? What if every time a Black person tries to position himself to help other Black people and they get taken down by the government? For example, Bill Cosby when he tried to buy NBC. Well, the thing I have to say to that is this: if we never did things that would put us under fire, if we never committed acts that are um, illegal, if these are not behaviors that we engage in because we have a very high level of accountability standards in the Black community, like we used to at one point, we never find ourselves in those types of predicaments in the first place. So, like I said, it definitely boils down to accountability standards. If we're not people who understand that the accountability standards in the Black community have to be reshaped, reframed, reconstructed, right? If we don't understand that part, we can't even begin to address the larger problem. The larger problem is Black inner city violence. That's inner city means in our Black cities, by the way. The amount of us killing us. That's the largest problem. Nobody else, not the police, not anybody else, just us. The greater problem within that is a lack of distress management skills. So we don't know how to self regulate. If we don't know how to self regulate, as soon as we find ourselves in high, hostile, distressing situations, we do these things to one another. And it's been normalized. So much so that people are no longer traumatized by seeing a dead body as they walk out of their house on their front lawn that doesn't even belong to their family system. This is Black America. It's not something traumatic anymore. It's not traumatic anymore for us to see people killing each other because now our internets have desensitized even our young people to the fact they've seen people being murdered. They've moved themselves from the constructs of normal humanity, and now we're something else. We're a whole different beast, and we're afraid to call a thing a thing. We're people who are so emotionally involved that we cannot have collaborative conversations with other people about what success looks like in their culture, because it triggers us to defend why our culture is not successful and how that's not a real comparison. But we start these conversations. That's what we saw Courtney do today. She immediately discounted Amina. She immediately discounted Anton. Why? Because they spoke a truth that was uncomfortable for her. It wasn't a truth from Kevin Samuels. The only I've seen this girl be Kevin Samuels' lapdog for too long. It's just it's let's go to the comments again. I didn't see them. Do you think rap music and violence on TV plus the lack of proper parenting contribute to the high rates of violence in our communities? I do. I think that rap music, I think violence, I think the way that we have normalized, not these things in and of themselves, but the way that we've normalized the repetition of the things that we see on media, whether it's rap music or TV, reality TV, the way that we've normalized it because parents aren't in the home or even outside of the home in the parental role, and we don't acknowledge or embrace village mentalities. Village mentalities help us maintain stability in our standards in our community. And I think that people have grown so far away from that that they really think it makes more sense to only be accountable for your kid, which really means they're accountable for themselves. If we really believe that the only jobs that Americans are working are jobs that are producing $30,000 to $40,000 annually, and both parents are working, if it's a two-parent system, and one parent is working and not making enough money, if it's a one-parent system for those said kids. Says black people has to change our image. What do you mean, image and budgets? I do. I think that it does have a lot to do with that. Okay, I saw that. I saw that one. But I think it has a lot to do with the mindset. We have to shift our mindset. We have to allow ourselves to be. Let me tell you guys something, okay? My client caseload is comprised of people of all different ethnicities and cultures as far as their background. It's never bothered me that many of these people had I- ideals, right, that were different than other people. Why? Because I know people are people. And for the longest, I ascribed to the mindset of, well, culture is pretty universal across the board. Until finally I kind of started doing my longitudinal studies, kind of collecting the information, the basic stats and stuff like that around perceptions of what wealth was in family systems. What I notice is that the black family has no sense of what financial or otherwise wealth is, legacy is, and we're talking about American families here. Over 200,000 people. Okay. Yeah, I had no out of all of the black families that were evaluated, which were about 75,000 of them, a little bit over 75,000 families. This is a very difficult one for me. None of them had life insurance policies. None of them. None of them had savings accounts. The vast majority of them were not working at all. No, they didn't have a will. And the vast majority of them were at for long periods of time dependent on government assistance, but no viable outcome from that. And what I mean is very similar to what Amina was trying to um describe when you see people who come over here as people who are in distress from other countries as immigrants. They come over here with nothing, literally nothing. So no family, no nothing, no nothing, right? And they will live all in one house all together, families and families just living all together, and collect whatever assistance is available to them, which is the same assistance that's available to Americans, so that they can find stability and they can ground themselves and root themselves in something. They will learn your laws, they will learn your regulatory authority around different business structures, and then they will acquire education that is needed in order for them to open up these particular businesses. And they will open these businesses and they will thrive, and eventually they will be repositioned in the socioeconomic component of life, and they will wean themselves off said assistance because now they have what they need to just live independently. Americans are here from the beginning, and Americans can sometimes see generational wealth as handing down their food stamp benefits, handing down their housing assistance benefits, handing down their utility assistant benefits. Please make it make sense for me. These are truths, you guys. This is true time. That's what it is. As much as we want to make a million excuses and we want to blame the black single mother led families, we want to blame the absence of black fathers, we want to blame blah, 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 we want to blame racist sex practices, whatever it is you guys want to blame for the disparities of the black community as compared to other races in America. I think that we do have to sit with some innate truths. That's the fact that we need to reconstruct the way that we determine what are the bounds, what are expectations, what does success look like, how do we get there, what are our cultural components that will help us live out meaningful lives and create a legacy. What does legacy mean? I think that that's the biggest thing that black American people struggle with, because we do so many comparative analyses that we have lost our sense of self. So, you know, whether you feel like men are the leaders of society in a black America and old black America so much, or women are the lead in society and old black America so much, let me just put a little birdie in your ear. Whether you're a person who believes that the woman and the man should both be working, should, when I say should, mean that means that you are an advocate for feminism in some way, because that's just what feminism is about. Okay? So whether you believe that woman should have her own said income, financial contribution to the stability of the household, whether you believe that there should be some sense of shared responsibility in households financially when it comes to a male and a female or not, I think that you do have to ask yourself a question as to what that looks like when it comes time for the woman to value the contribution of her man, to value the valuation of her relationship and what that looks like, because submission only comes when women find a need to do so based off of them having an innate need for a man, not just a desire, but need. So, although women can say, I don't need a man, I don't need a man, I don't need a man, in her independence before she becomes interdependent on a man, I would hope that most women live their life by not needing a man, because that would mean that she would be open to submit to any man, not rested in her femininity and waiting for her king. So I would hope that somebody has explained that to you. I just would hope. But if they have not, I'm explaining it to you now. So, men, if you don't understand what that means, That means that you probably need to go back to your source. And I know that the black fathers are out of the black home. So, you know what? Go to your grandparents or men in your successful black men in your society and ask them what that means. What does submission require? Right? And what does that mean once a woman submits to you? Because you need to know and you need to understand that you don't want a woman that has submitted to everybody, because you men have a problem with that. You think that all women are your prize. So not that there is a select woman out there meant to, submit to you because you are her king. She trusts you. But you think that every woman is for you. And if you think that every woman is for you, you will never find your queen, because ideally, right? This is basic pragmatics. If every woman is for you, she's also for every man. You're not the man of all men, right? You're the man of all men for her whenever you find her, because you have to be intentional about that thing, right? So somebody has to put these basic constructs, these basic principles of meaningful connections into the minds of people, and I don't know, brainwash them. So Kevin Samuels, go do that. You're good at that. Brainwash them with these ideals so that there can be some level of survival instead of extinction of the black and brown community in America. So there can be some recreation and reseeding of accountability standards in black America and what it looks like for people to be successful. I think that people in black America put too much value in the wrong places, which leads to their financial instability. So if you are a person who spends a lot of money on the surface, recognize that these are some issues that are probably rooted in some level of trauma or some level of inferiority complex, and address those issues. You don't have to be out here dressing in Lacoste and, you know, Gucci and Prada and Fendi. You don't have to do all of that. You don't have to have a Chanel or a Birkin bag in order for you to be a high valued woman or considered a high status woman. The vast majority of people who earn a tremendous amount of income will come outside in something that probably costs less than you know what I mean? They're much less than their jewelry. However, what you see in black Americans that is that they will go out there and spend a ton of money on their clothing so they can look the part and have the cheaper, you know, house, cheaper, what is it, rent, they'll still be renting the house. They won't have anything of value that they can continue to hand down. Yeah. Well, they'll have a Lexus or a Bentley outside, but they rent in somebody apartment. It's interesting to me the way you put your valuation in the things that you value. I don't know. I just think that more education and insight leads to better outcomes. So just start asking some of those questions, folks. That's all that I ask. That's all that I ask. Truth is sometimes hard to sit with, sometimes hard to swallow, as we could see from Courtney's interactions and Kay's interactions and responses to Anton. But I don't believe in silencing male opinions. I feel like Anton's trauma definitely holds validity. I think that his experience is what I would hope for every black man. Says it's because immigrants have strong cultures. Strong cultures create unity. American black culture promotes disrespect amongst blacks themselves. I do agree. I spoke to that earlier, but not just immigrants, because Anton isn't an immigrant at all. He's from here. Says, I'm tired of us hurting each other and not striving for a better society. I know that this lady is doing her part and I applaud her and us for having these discussions. I'll be glad when she has. But if a woman is submissive, then she's that, period. Imagine a man saying, I'm only protecting a woman that deserves it. I'm only going to be a leader for the right woman. So, how do you see those two as synonymous? So, a woman should not be submissive, period. And let's go back to that previous comment. So a woman cannot give her submission to any man. She can't, not and have any value. Um, the thing is, in these other cultures where we spoke about the value of the women and the women being happy, they weren't happy because they submitted to any man. They were happy that when the right man came along and courted her properly and asked for her parents' hand in marriage, and her father directed her that that was him, she submitted to him, not every man. So submission is not a universal thing. Submission is a position of leadership, but it's also a position of trust. You relinquishing and allowing someone to be trusted at all costs by you, submitting to their authority, submitting to their leadership, and giving them 100% of you, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Says no rational person wants to submit to another, not in free society. If a man wants submission, then he's got issues. That's interesting. One could easily argue, I would easily argue the fact that it would be irrational for a man to not want submission, considering the fact that you want peace in your relationship. And that's literally how a woman is a man's peace, through her submission. I'm convinced that the same media Miss Sandy is speaking about perpetuating negative stereotypes are the same people behind the manosphere and divestment channels on YouTube. I agree to a certain extent. I do feel like and I'm gonna say this too. I'm gonna say this because I feel like it's a point that needs to be made. So the general culture of men in America is not really my concern. I'm going to say that because I feel like it needs to be said. But the larger culture of the black man in America is my concern, because my concern is pointing the black man to the right direction when they don't have fathers to engage with, so that they can align themselves properly with the expectations of black women who are matured enough emotionally to step into places and spaces of healthy relationship building with them, because they've processed their traumas that impact their divestment from the black man. So women nowadays aren't submissive to the men they sleep with, date, or marry. By way of definition, if they have submitted their body, they have definitely submitted, maybe not in every way, but in part ways. In order to allow a man to enter you, you must submit physically, anatomically speaking, unless he's raping you. And even then, you still have to submit. Otherwise, you're fighting him tooth and nail, physically, mentally. He said a person can't turn their personality on and off at the drop of a dime. If you're submissive, then you're submissive. If you're a protector, then you're a protector. So submissive and the protector role are not the same. They're not synonymous. So a woman's job in a relationship is to be a man's compass and his peace. And a man's job in the relationship is to protect and provide for said family, his legacy. So if she is his compass, his peace, she is the guide to his legacy, because she is the one that births his legacy. But first, it does involve submission. She has to submit to him to allow that legacy to be created through sex. Um, so, well, when she opens her legs, she's definitely submissive, for sure. I wouldn't say when she enters into any relationship though, because relationship starts with vetting and then courtship, you know, and at the end of the day, it's about allowing them to create a sense of security by way of demonstrating that they have a proven capacity to do those things that men are supposed to do for that woman. And then she submits. So, some of the healthiest relationships we notice are built off of mutual respect, but also properly vetted and rendered submission in the relationship. Yes, I would say once again, it's about culture. Palestinians are more oppressed in their own land, but the women are still submissive to Palestinian men. The women are definitely submissive to their man in Palestine, but they are not submissive to men in general. Palestinian men are extremely controlling, and they definitely have an issue with people looking at their women and their women looking back at men. So I think that you guys confuse submission with subservience and respect. So that's a bit different. Submission implies control. Controlling men are never healthy and lead to toxic and possibly abusive relationships. Well, I've never experienced either. So, and it's always my intention and always my thing to submit to my man. So I guess it depends on perception and the way that those men view submission, as I said before. So understanding has a lot to do with everything. Since I mean they be actually bankrolling and investing in the growth of these negative content creators. I totally agree. Totally agree, Candy Girl. But so continue to share your insights, and for those of you who came in later on the video, go back and review and kind of look at some of the conversation that they had on the P Let's Talk and give me your responses. Tell me what you feel as a result of watching that and what you observed. I'd definitely be interested to know about it. Let me know what it is that you feel American culture equates to. Tell me to what extent you feel like we should differentiate from the generalized constructs of culture and take responsibility and what that should look like, as being productive members of society in our culture. And that is all that I have. As always, you guys are absolutely lovely. You're great. And my chat is always very engaging. So I appreciate you guys for sitting through the show and watching this content with me and navigating this conversation, because I know it's a difficult one. I know that these are concepts that are very difficult for us to sit with as people. And I encourage you guys to continue to have these conversations because they are very much needed. And the lack of comfort that we have, that we feel, is indicative of traumatizing events that we've experienced. So just know that. And as you know that, be curious about what events inspire this trauma response to what we've been, discussing. So that's all I got, you guys. So later days. Bye.
Who alive can't put me in a box. I redefine any definition you got. I am the tiger, I'm making steps to the top. The flames, I'll rip it up, you just gotta hand me the rock. Take a seat, you cannot stand it. All I know, the flow harder than a Scotch bunny. Don't try studying me, you cannot manage. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon.